experience of how the world treats imperfection. I didn't know it then, but that birthmark was my first lesson in Kintsugi. Welcome to midlife. Nobody plans the drop. Your sleep shifts, energy changes, the room you once felt like you owned feels different, and you can't quite exactly figure out why or what's going on. So you do what you've been trained to do. You push harder. You say yes when you mean no. You smile through it, and quietly, deep down inside, it's cracking you open from the inside. And one day, it might be a Tuesday, nothing dramatic. You catch your reflection and you think, who is that? That's the drop. Not a crisis, not a breakdown, a threshold. And I want to talk to you about what happens next because I think we've been getting it wrong. So, to give you a little bit more background about Kintsugi, and I think it deserves more than just a passing mention. In Japan in the 15th century, or so the story goes, a shogun sent his broken tea bowl to China for repair. And when it came back, it had these ugly metal staples in it. And the Japanese craftsmen were very determined to make this something more beautiful. So they developed a technique using lacquer mixed with silver, gold, or platinum. And the result wasn't just a repaired bowl, it was transformed. And this is what I find so radical about the philosophy. It operates under belief that breakage is a part of an object's history, not something to be hidden, but something to be honored. Even a word in Japanese, wabi sabi, the beauty found in imperfection and impermanence, the worn, the weathered, the imperfect. These are not flaws to correct. They are evidence of a life fully lived. Now, let's contrast that to what we're taught. We're taught to look flawless, to recover quickly, to be back to normal as fast as possible after loss, grief, a major change in life. We are taught that seamlessness equals strength. But what if it doesn't? What if the seam, the visible golden seam, is actually the proof of something stronger? I want to get a little bit personal because I've shared some of my cracks. And for a long time, I did what most of us do. I kind of speckled it together, pretended it didn't exist, kept moving, looked fine from the outside. And the birthmark story that I told you in the beginning, that was just the initial learning for me. A 6-year-old that her body needed to be edited before it was accepted. I carried that into my teens, into my 20s, in relationships where I made myself smaller in order to be easier to love. And then midlife arrived. And it has a way of kind of blowing the spackling right off the wall. For me, it wasn't a single crack. It was more like everything that I'd used to hold it together decided to let go all at once. My sense of identity, my certainty about what came next, the version of myself that I'd been performing for other people. I remember sitting with one of my friends and talking about the things that were going on. And she said something that I'll never forget. She said, we've talked a lot about not falling apart or wanting to keep things together. But what if you ask what you might become? And that sentence opened me up in the best possible way. And I think that midlife, in doing so, does that for many of us, not destroy us, just cracking us open. And I want you to know that that feeling, that disorientation, that grief, that strange mix of fear and freedom is not something that signals there's a problem, that there's something wrong with you. And it's well documented in human psychology, and researchers like Brene Brown and some of the other universities have looked at this, and they find that people who actually live the life they want to live are not the ones who avoided pain. They're the ones who learn to move through it without losing themselves. Another study at Harvard basically said and it's a long running study on happiness, and found that people tend to report more emotional well-being and clearer values as to who they are and what they want as they moved into their 50s and beyond. Not despite hard things, but because of them. I've heard from so many of you in messages and comments and emails that you've sent me. I didn't expect to feel lost at this age. I thought I would have figured it out by now. Everyone else seems to be doing fine. Why am I not fine? And that's where I want to say to you, every single one of you, the bowl didn't fail. It broke. And that's not the end of the story. So, what does it look like to repair with gold instead of hiding the cracks? I think this looks a little bit different for everyone, but there are some things I've noticed in my own life and in the lives of the people that I work with. It starts with honesty, not the performative vulnerability you learn about on social media, the curated caption about hard seasons, or it doesn't say real honesty. It's the kind of thing that when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you say, this isn't working. I don't know who I am. And maybe you're scared, and maybe you're frustrated, but that's the beginning. That admission is where the gold starts. Then bring in curiosity. And instead of what's wrong with me, it's what is this trying to show me? What's next for me? A client of mine came to me about something that happened with her, and maybe you will have experienced the same thing. She thought of a project, designed the parameters around it, and went to the powers that be in order to get funding and to really build out the project. And of course, she thought my project, it should be my project. It was my idea. I did all the groundwork. I figured out the resources, everything, projected income, everything. But she found out the project was given to someone else. And the rationale was, well, they have more energy for the project. And she sat across from me for a moment and was just devastated. And then she said, I didn't know energy had an expiration date. And that was her crack right then and there. And I watched her do what so many of us do in the moment. She started thinking about how to prove them wrong, how to show up louder, faster, more visible, how to out energy somebody half her age. But after a little bit of talking, she slowed down. And actually, she got a different question, a better one. And that was, what kind of energy do I actually want to bring? Because what I know about women in midlife, the energy doesn't go, it shifts. It gets more selective, less frantic and frenetic, more precise. It stopped being about volume and starts being about direction and focus. So she started planning, not frantically, quietly, She didn't blow her life up overnight. She took her time. She got clear. And when she was ready, on her own time, not someone else's, she made the jump. She started her own company. And she will tell you herself she has a completely new lease on life. She didn't lose her energy. She finally stopped spending it on things that weren't worthy of it. Midlife doesn't make you irrelevant. It makes you intolerant of the things that are out of sync with who you are and who you are becoming. And sometimes it feels like fingernails on the chalkboard. And that is where the gold comes in. Then comes integration. This is the gold itself, incorporating the experience, the loss, the confusion, the fear into you, into the new you. That's full Kintsugi, the full Kintsugi you. Not pretending it didn't happen, not letting it define you as damaged goods, but carrying it forward as part of your story, as evidence of your resilience, as something that made you more, not less. I invite you to pause here, not skip ahead, not file this away for later. Actually pause. If you're driving, you can let this land while you drive. If you're walking, maybe slow down a bit. Ask yourself 3 questions. And if you want, write them down. You can come back. I'll list them in the show notes. 1, what is the crack I've been trying to hide? The thing that I've been spackling over, performing around, and hoping that no one notices. Number 2, what would it look like to stop hiding it? Maybe not to everyone, but stop hiding it from you, from yourself. 3, if the crack were repaired with gold, it will become more visible, more part of your story. And how would that change how you see yourself? There's no right answer here, just your answer. I'm going to leave you with something concrete, something you can actually do this week. I call it the Kintsugi inventory, and it's really easy. Get a piece of paper or make a note on your phone. Draw a simple outline of a bowl. It doesn't have to be pretty. This is not art class, and believe me, if you've seen my drawings, you would know that is not my forte. Inside the bowl, write the cracks, the losses, the transitions, the moments you felt broken, big ones, small ones, the ballet teacher, the marriage that didn't last, the dream you gave up, the diagnosis you received, the goodbye you didn't get to say. And now, this is the important part. Next to each crack, write one thing that came from it, a strength that you didn't know that you had. Maybe it's a relationship that deepened, a direction you would have never taken, a version of yourself that only showed up because the old version fell away. You don't have to find something for every crack right away. Some cracks are still pretty fresh and maybe feel a little bit raw. Some are still healing. But I genuinely believe that when you look at that bowl, you'll see something beautiful. You'll see a life that was lived, a person who bent and broke and kept going. You'll see Kintsugi. I'm going to Japan next month, and I'm going to find a real Kintsugi bowl. I'm going to hold it in my hands and look at the gold seams running through it. the places where it shattered and was made whole again. And I'm going to think about you and all of us in this strange and uncomfortable and oddly freeing season of our life, about the cracks that we carry, about the gold that is inside us. Midlife isn't the end of the bowl. It is just the beginning. It is where we find our gold. Thanks for being here, and thank you for listening. And I look forward to speaking with you next week. Bye for now.